Good morning, and you're very welcome to this morning's Signpost webinar. My name is Pat Murphy, Head of Environment Knowledge Transfer with Teagasc. The Signpost webinars are brought to you in conjunction with National Rural Network, Food Drink Ireland SkillNet, and Dairy Sustainability Ireland. This morning, we're delighted to be joined by Carol Quish, Project Manager for Mulkear EIP, and she's been with the project from its inception in 2019. The project works on implementing measures with farmers to improve the quality of water in the catchment. You're very welcome, Carol.
Good morning, Pat. Thank you for the introduction.
And also joined by Noel Meehan. Noel is the Programme Manager with the ASSA programme, so Noel will be handling questions. So Carol, you might just give us a brief introduction to yourself and your work in the EIP.
Yes, indeed. Pat, sorry, as you mentioned here, this project kicked off in 2019, and we are in my presentation now. We'll get a lot more detail, but we're based down in County Limerick and County Tipperary on the Mulkear River, which is a huge catchment of over 650 kilometres square, and it drains most of the farmland in the South Tipperary, East Limerick.
Okay. Well, if you're ready to go ahead, without further ado, we'll get you to begin your presentation.
Good morning, everybody. As Pat says, I'm here to present the Mulkear European Innovation Partner Project, and my name is Carol, and I'm the project manager. And I'm broadcasting this morning from Palace Green in County Limerick, where our offices are located. And it's quite a pleasant morning down here. Yesterday morning, not so much so, but today is quite good. So just to give you a background of what I'm going to do, I'm going to give an overview. I'll give a brief background of the Mulkear Catchment, then the EIP project, and finally, I'm going to report on the findings to date with this project. So, oh my God, they've now decided not to move forward. Okay, excellent, we're going. So to pull down the project background. The project is a community and family project that commenced in the spring of 2019, and the project is co-funded by the Department of Agriculture, Food, Marine and EU, and we have a fund of approximately 1.17 million. The project team consists of a board of 3 members. We have a steering and advisory panel, also with 3 local members, who come with a vast array of both practical, commercial and research skill sets. And of course, we have our operational group. Now, meetings are ongoing with all these groups over the time. And as I said, I have been with the project from the outside, albeit in different roles, and there is also a part-time field officer working on the project. So the Mulkear River, the actual image of the catchment, it rises into the Slieve Mountains, which are in the northeast of the catchment, and it flows a mostly northwesterly direction through a farm landscape before joining the lower Shannon at Annacotty. The catchment drains an area of approximately 650 metres square in counties Limerick and Tipperary, with approximately half the catchment in each county. There are several large tributaries to the Mulkear, including the Newport, the Carteen, the Dead, the Bilbo and the Newport. When I refer to the water body as the Mulkear River, I am really speaking about where the Dead and the Bilbo join, which is really the main stem, which is just west of the Palace Green village, where I'm located, approximately 21 kilometres in length. The Mulkear catchment has been heavily influenced by arterial drainage works schemes over many years. Under the Drainage Act in 1978, the Resk and the Dead, which are tributaries, had embankment construction, and the bed of the river was lowered at the old bridge in just down again, not quite far here from Palace Green. In the late 90s, a flood release scheme was undertaken on the Newport River, and later a bypass on the Bilbo River for Cappamore Village was built. The OPW and the local authorities carry out maintenance work, which is generally limited to embankment and structural damage. This of the 7 sub-catchments that we in the project are involved with. We have the Inch in the northeast of the catchment, which is in County Tipperary, the Toom and Capawhite, and the Dade and Mulkear, which straddle the county bounds, and then we have Mulkear 10 and Mulkear 20, which are in County Limerick. That's just an overview of the thing. So the project objectives, it set out to develop a collaborative approach with all the stakeholders, the wider community and the farmers. Now the relevant stakeholders here that we work with are the Agricultural Sustainable Support and Advisory Programme, ASAP, the local authorities water programme, LawPro, the dairy co-ops within the catchment, there are 4, the local farming groups, and of course the farmers and the wider community. For each of the planned 60 farmers that we wanted to enlist to the project, we have undertaken very detailed farm assessments. We are also implementing on-farm mitigation measures, and we set out to devise a results-based agri-environmental scheme for the project. This project is slightly different from the other EIPs in that we are targeting water quality as opposed to habitat and our species. We are going to deliver farm discussion group meetings across the catchment, and there's also an outreach program part of the project, and this involves an environmental education program which we already have rolled out to the national schools in the catchment. Now this got slightly curtailed over the last year, but we will hope to get it back on track again in the coming season and this coming year. So as I said, we deal with the ASAP, and we have the 4 co-ops, the dairy processing co-ops, being Kerry, Dairy Gold, Arvaughan and Tip, and then we also have the 2 chocolate advisors, Claire Mooney and Porrick are also operating in the area. We also deal very closely with the LawPro in the southeast and the southwest regions, and I would like very much to thank Ruth Hennessy for maps that she has supplied me with for today's presentation. So how have we selected our farmers for this project? Buy-in from the farming community had been very positive from the very outset, and we received in excess of 150 expression of interest forms. Now we had the normal selection criteria for the planned 60 farmers, such as they had to have land within the catchment, they had to have active hard numbers, they had to be over 18 years of age. But we had 2 very important criteria that we implemented for this project. We didn't take all farmers on a first come, first served basis. We undertook an assessment of both the farmer, the farm and the individual farmer. The field officer for the project walked all the relevant farms, and he scored each farm for the environment in their environmental risk, ranging from high, medium and low. And secondly, he assessed all the potential pressures on each of the water courses, and these were ranked from 1 to 3, with 3 being a major pressure of the water body. And very importantly, was the farmer attitude towards our project. We assessed each farmer's willingness to actively engage with the project and be proactive, being proactive to undertake the measures that we were asking him was also considered. As I say, that was very much part of our selection. The soil type is predominantly heavily with a very high clay content, and generally it's not suitable for tillage in the lower regions, and in the upper regions there's quite a lot of silos up there. It is generally very poor drainage and retains water in times of flood and in the winter months. The blue areas on this map here, the Mulkear Catchment is just here, are being classified as poorly drained, and the grazing season in the lower catchment is generally turn out around the 17th of March, and cattle are usually back in the sheds down here by mid-October. Now that's just a good average. There is extensions on both sides of that, but on average that's a fair reflection of what goes on down here. This map or bar chart, I'm sure we've all seen. It shows the values of the waters, the rivers in Ireland, with the blue bars here being the high quality down to bad, The blue would obviously be the pristine waters. With this again, all rivers in the Mulkear Catchment have been assessed under this, and not only is the ecological status assessed, but the physiochemical elements and the hydromorphology elements. As you can see here, the blue has decreased over the timeline. This is from 1997 right forward to 2020, has decreased, as has the green. And of course, we have seen an increase in the moderate for that uptake. And the rivers in the Mulkear Catchment are also very much reflected in these changes. This slide, there's a lot going on, but it's just to give an indication of the different quality scores of the catchment of the rivers on the tributaries, I suppose, within the Mulkear Catchment. This is where I'm located today here, the pink spot. This here reflects the Mulkear 10 and Mulkear 20, which are good. If we go over then here to the dead and the quality, they are poor or moderate quality. The Kappa White is also Kappa White and Tuma moderate, and up here in the northeast, this is the Inch Catchment, which again has moderate status, which hope these are the results, and these are EPA for entire catchment. So what is the issue, or what are the main nutrients entering the river down here? And the research tells us from the EPA that the phosphorus and of course silt would follow phosphorus are the main nutrients in the water. The blue here on the map, again the Mulkear Catchment clearly shows this, and the orange here refers to nitrates leaching into the water courses, which is not really because of our heavy clay or heavy soil type in the Mulkear is not really a problem. So all the nutrients from the land in this area would be reaching the rivers through overland flow, as the image here on the right shows. So next I'm going to move on to our pavement structure. We have developed a hybrid pavement structure for this project, and it has three elements. The first one being the action-based element, and this really is a payment to the farmers for capital works that have been carried out, and we have had all these works carried out in the earlier part of the scheme, and now they are being paid for them over the life of the project. And the next element in which we found, which is really something we've worked very hard on, is the results-based payment scheme. And this was aimed to incentivize the farmers to address specific problems on their farm and to work with the measures as within their own control. Because this project is addressing water quality, indicator species as used by other EIPs weren't really relevant. This was a challenge, as water quality is difficult to measure in the first case, and to relate it back to land use in a local area is again extremely difficult to do. Farmers are not farming the actual rivers or streams, so the basis that we use for the assessment for the results base has to be within their control to be effective. So what we've decided to do is to target the on-farm actions completed by the individual farmers as the result indicators. So each year, our field officer will inspect and score these results I have an example of the score sheet in the next slide, which I'll show you in a minute. But we have kept this extremely simple. And take, for the example, one of our mitigation measures is a silt trap. Our field officer will be checking whether that has been maintained. So that means if there's been built up a silt, that it has been removed. Now we're also insisting that wetland plants be planted. Again, they need to be maintained. So it really will be the maintenance of the action base will form our results base. And then finally, we have each farmer in the group has to attend 5 discussion groups. These are mandatory, and they get paid for attending those. So this comes up then to their total annual payment, is how we calculate it. Now, just quickly, this is the scorecard. We've kept this extremely simple to keep it transparent. Farmers know exactly what's going on. There is issues where they will not be paid. So this is an example for a riparian buffer inspection. Whereas if there's livestock accessing it, they won't be paid. And this will be signed both by the farmer and the field officer on the day of the inspection. This table here just shows an example of the more popular measures that were taken up by the farmers on the nutrient management, the low emission slurry spreading, the lime, the multi-species. We go down to the silt traps and inceptor drains, and our rates of payment here. These were calculated so as to cover a portion of the cost of the measure, with the farmer paying the balance. And each farmer, in consultation with the field officer and sometimes myself, 4 measures were assigned to each of the farmers to undertake. This is one of the images of one of our farmers in the participating. The field officer had been out and he was hoping to install a pond. So this is him indicating where it's going to be installed, and this is the final result. Now, these images have all been taken in the last few months, so when we come back next summer, we would see a lot of, these will all have greened up and look considerably different. This was a very interesting feature that we came across within one of the catchments. This is a major tributary of the Mulkear. Now it's up at the very headwaters, but the river was actually being used as the roadway to access about 4 farms. And luckily, the farmer has now gone and put down a separate roadway adjoining the stream. And since this picture was taken, this now has all been fenced off. This was a major undertaking, and this farmer was absolutely went above and beyond the call of duty to complete the measures. So just to give you some details now of our participating farmers, in actual fact, we recruited 65 farmers in the end. We were just covering for natural waste that may occur over the project. So we have 26 dairy farmers, we have 22 suckler, 16 cattle, and we actually have 1 tillage farmer. And this man is contract growing oats for Flavins. He's just quite near Tipperary town. Very, very interesting man to deal with. So this is a location of the 65 participant farmers. As you can see, they're quite dispersed. The white line here is the county bounds, so maybe Limerick are shading it as a fraction, but this group over here is that inch catchment that I spoke to you about earlier, and all the rest are dispersed across the other catchments that we're working on. And just a little interesting map that I had created for today's presentation. This again just shows in the yellow dots where the farmers are, but now we've also put in all the tributaries that flow within our catchment. And as you can see, there's a vast array of them. And in actual fact, these just show the water bodies, the natural water bodies, but with the arterial drainage, we have an awful lot of main drains running across the catchment, and they are actually not in the image, so there actually is more water bodies within the catchment than what it is. So every farmer within this catchment is not very far from a watercourse that leads into the Mulkear River. So our participating farmers, as I said earlier, each farmer was assessed for his environmental risk, and 37% of our participating farmers have high environmental risk, 28 are low, and 35 are moderate. Generally, the dairy farmers were within the high, and the moderate and low were our cattle and suckler farmers. So this is the percentage of area involved in the land area involved in the project. We have in total 3,200 hectares. Again, the dairy sector have the highest portion of this, and they have 40%, whereas suckler is 34%, cattle 25%, and the others are just down at 106. That's our tillage farmer. So the stocking rate for the catchment is for the average stocking rate was 208 livestock units per hectare, whereas the dairy was 230, the suckler 202, and the cattle sector at the lowest of 188. So then we looked at also the organic kilograms of nitrogen per hectare. Again, the average for all our 65 farmers is 145 kgs, the dairy being the highest at 177, suckler 106, and our cattle at 112 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare. So the uptake of measures by the different farming sectors, both the water access supply mitigation measures and the nutrient management, which is the down here in the green, is the 28 and 29, had the highest uptake, which we were very pleased with because these are so topical at the moment. But the one that we were very disappointed with was the uptake of riparian, installing riparian zones or buffer zones, and these are both riparian and infield zones. It only 7% of the farmers came forward to take these up, which we were disappointed with, but all we wanted to do was put in a 3-metre width from the top of the bank, and we offered, I think we had about 5 different types of buffer strips ranging from flailed to wildlife margins, but this is the result, and this is it just shows that maybe there isn't a huge appetite for farmers to fence off buffer zones. That certainly wasn't within the Mulkear. So in total, there was 252 measures that we wanted our 65 farmers to complete last year, and we had over a 95% completion rate on this, which we were very, very pleased with. Of the farmers who didn't complete 8 out of 10 of the farmers who didn't complete the 4 measures, they did complete 3 measures, and then 1 farmer only just completed 1 measure. And the reasons that they weren't completed were on the whole genuine farmers, and most of these farmers have agreed to undertake these measures in the coming year. So that's, we're accepting that. Is a little busy again, but this just shows a little more detail the specific measures we had. As I said, 28 in total. Now up at the top here with the fencing the watercourses, the lime, the multi-species, which we were very pleased with the uptake in that, and then the solar pumps and the silt traps, and the images here are all from our catchment. So this is just to show you, we had an array of silt traps in channel ponds, settlement ponds carried out. These were designed in cooperation with the farmer and our field officer, and the images here just really highlight that they were built to suit each specific farmer. They weren't bespoke. Now, with the silt traps, there had to be 3 chambers, but we really tailored them to the specific farms, and a lot of time designing out, and the field officers spent an awful lot of time designing these different type systems for different farmers. So this is the figure on the right here. It shows the amount paid from the fund for the different measures, and obviously the fencing the watercourse was the highest earner this year, then followed by the low emission slurry. And the image here on the left is a pond that was never in existence previously. This is located on a farm that had very high hilly ground down to the corner of the field. And this farmer went above and beyond what was required, and he's put in a very, very high standard of a pond here. Again, it doesn't show the vegetation, but over this coming year, when the vegetation comes back and that, we might do some camera trail work in here to see what species are coming back in. It's something we're looking at, but again, we will be assessing that this year as the project rolls out. So we also ran, this was another part, as I said, for the payment, these farmer discussion groups. Now, each farmer had to attend 5 of these, and this just gives the list on the left there just gives an idea of the topics that were covered, the on-farm nutrient pathways, the soil fertility, the timing and application of all the nutrients from slurry, farmyard fertilizer, and nutrient management plan. Now, these will be continuing over the life of the project. Now, we were a little unlucky last year in that we had to completely reorganize the plan format and schedule of these because of, we won't mention what happened, but we got there. Now we had to eventually resort to holding them in sheds, and we had to run, they had to be condensed in so much time or timeline of what we were planning. But in actual fact, they worked out really well because we were getting them time value or face value with the farmers every 3 weeks over the months of September, October, November, when the measures were being done. And it really did help that they were meeting us, they could discuss their issues, their problems. I think it actually helped, and we built up a great camaraderie. Now, We divided our 65 farmers into 5 groups, and we organised them for 5 consecutive evenings each week that we ran them. So this really worked out well in that farmers who had, for whatever reasons, local funerals, children going off to do extracurricular stuff, that once they contacted me, I could slot them into another evening. So the final result was that we had over 98% attendance at the discussion group meetings, which we were very, very pleased with. So just to give an idea of some of the project finances, the overall budget of the 1.17 was broken down to 71% for project implementation, 23.5% for the administration, and then there's 5.5% for outreach, the dissemination of the project at the end. So each farmer, each of our 65 farmers has the potential to earn 7,000 over the life of the project. Now, I just here the inch catchment, just picking an example of one of the catchments. The green hatched area here shows the farmers in this. We have 9 farmers in this catchment. It's not a very big catchment, and it's up in the uplands, but we have 2 dairy farmers in here and the rest are beef and suckler. Now, all the farmers in this catchment are more or less involved. Now, there is a location here where I'm pointing to where farmers are not involved, but he is probably one of the most environmentally aware farmers that I have met in the last 2 to 3 years. And when we assessed his farm, he had no environmental risk. He was very happy to be involved, but we certainly could do nothing for him because he was doing it all himself. Now, this catchment also has quite a bit of forestry, as you can see here, and this area here is an actual working bog where people are still cutting turf out of it every year. Now, there are 2 EPA water catchment monitoring points here. There's one here in the middle of the catchment, and then there's the other one is down here, right where it leaves where it joins the confluence of the Bilbo River. It rises further up here just before it joins the Bilbo River. And LAWSAT, or especially in the southeast, are keeping us abreast of the water quality here. Currently, the water quality in this catchment is moderate, but because we have such a large involvement here, we were possibly seeing improvement, and we have put in things like a large sections of this catchment that have now been fenced that were been previously. There's 4 or 5 solar pumps and pasture pumps gone in there. There's 3 or 4 silt traps gone in. There's been a great uptake of measures. There's 2 new ponds after being built by the farmer down here. So it's just to give an idea of at the catchment level what the project is actually undertaking. Okay. So the next thing we're looking at, what are the next steps that we're going to undertake for the project? So first of all, the field officer will be creating nutrient management plans and slurry risk assessments, fertilizer risk maps for each of the farmer. This is just to give an idea here on the right. Now, for nutrient management plans, my field officer has a great saying that what is not measured cannot be managed. And he has been promoting all of last year on the discussion groups that our farmers need up-to-date soil tests. So look at the new pilot soil sampling program came online at around the same time we were at our discussion groups, and over 80% of the farmers that need to have soil tests done have been accepted into that program, which is absolutely excellent. And most of the soil testing now has been undertaken in the catchment, and we're expecting results back in the next few days. So to have accurate nutrient management plans, the field officer has to be aware of the actual pH levels, and he will also create for each of our farmers literally a prescription for each of their fields on what slurry application, does it need it, if fertilizer, this will all be prepared for him, and then he will go out and sit at the kitchen table and go through this in detail with each the farmer. Now, we've spoken to the farmers and they're very excited to get this map, and they really appreciate the fact that we're going to sit down with them individually and go through it. We want to carry out an attitudinal questionnaire. Again, this was planned for last year but had to be postponed. At one of our discussion group meetings, one of our farmers asked a very relevant question: what about analysing our slurry to see again what nutrients or what are the component of nutrients in it? So the field officer and myself are at the moment planning an experimental protocol for this. We haven't it quite worked out, but we will certainly be looking at the 3 farming enterprises that we have in the project, and we'll probably also look at maybe the addition of those commercial biological additives that are currently on the marketplace. And then finally, one other task that we have now just recently commenced is a water monitoring pilot scheme in order to evaluate the success of the on-farm mitigation measures that we have installed, and we have sought advice, and we are collaborating with the Chemistry Research Department in DCU, and then we're just about to start a pilot scheme on this, where we will undertake roughly about 9 assays from each water sample, and then we will judge whether we need to take, when the initial pilot is complete, we will judge whether we need to take this further or not. So one other little thing, if we are feeling that sometimes we don't be busy enough down here in Mulkear, we entered into a collaboration last year with Vincent Wildlife Trust for a little project for the conservation of this little creature here who's called the lesser horseshoe bat. This project is funded by the EU Recovery Fund 2014 to 22, and the map on the right here shows the location of the population of these lesser horseshoe bats in the country at present. I mean, you can quite clearly see here there's an absence of a population or between the Clare, Kerry and Cork region. So our collaboration with Vincent Wildlife Trust is to build, yes, here we are, is to build these little roosting houses for the bats in the hope that we will bridge that gap between the 2 populations. And this map here shows that some of the areas where to date we have 7 farmers now have commenced, have signed contracts for this, are actually some of the existing farmers, and it's just slightly northeast of where we're working at the moment. So again, it's not a long project, it's only for a year. So finally, I'm nearly there, Pat. I just want to show the highlights from our project to date. Okay, so 38 kilometres of water courses have been fenced across the catchment. 23 water pumps have been installed. 2,700 tonnes of lime has been spread across the catchment. 2,130 trees have been planted. 61 hectares of multi-species sward has been sown, and over 1 million gallons of slurry that was not previously applied with low emission slurry has now been undertaken. Finally, and some more 3,300 meters of buffer zones have been fenced. 23 silt traps, settlement ponds, in-channel ponds have been constructed. 15 acres of wetland has been fenced off, and 14 ponds have either been enhanced or created. Again, these are images showing a pasture pump here being installed. This is road work that's being done where alongside that's actually one of the main drains there. And all of these works that have been completed have huge co-benefits for the biodiversity within the catchment. This is just a selection of some farmer feedback that I just gathered up in the last few days because our attitudinal questionnaire didn't learn. Now, they're mixed. I do pretty like the last one here. The project has, this is his own words, has shown me that the mindsets have to change, and this is something that we feel very strongly as a team about, is changing the mindset of the farmers. And if he said that if he wants to see salmon back in the stream in his lifetime, when he was a young farmer starting out, there was plenty of salmon in the stream every year, and now he hasn't seen any in a long number of years. And this other man here realizes now that if we don't take action now, that it needs to be taken now so that it's there for the future generations. This one here just says Mulkear has facilitated farmers both financially and educationally to complete measures that will in time improve the water quality of the river. So now I have a little short video that we're going that I'm going to play.
Dairy Fairman here in East Limerick. I heard about the Mulkear EIP program a couple of years ago and was very interested by it. It targeted improving the water quality of the Mulkear catchment area. Big factor is big dairy country, the Mulkear Catchment, and we're responsible for a lot of the water quality, and as part of that we want to ensure better water quality in the area. And so I've taken on 4 actions here on the farm, try and improve the water quality and biodiversity on the farm. And we're standing in one of them. This is a multi-species sward I planted in August. We haven't got to graze it yet, so it's almost ready to be grazed. Performed very well. We're very happy with how it has taken. So weeds aren't too bad, so it's quite good. We're hoping to get better performance from this, from the cows, as well as reduced nitrogen inputs. We're hoping to get the same kilograms of dry matter per hectare with 150 kilograms of nitrogen as opposed to 250 kilograms of nitrogen on standard perennial ryegrass swards. So that's the hope here, is to reduce our nitrogen input into this and have the same performance, and actually better performance from our cows grazing this product. I've also spread a lot of lime. I spread over 100 tons of lime in the farm this year to keep my soil fertility right, so that I get best use out of my fertilizers that I spread here, that the pH levels are correct. And it also helps the clover incorporation that I've been carrying out here for a couple of years, where you need the pH at 6.2 to 6.5 in order to get a good take of clover. And we've seen the benefits of that this year, where we have good clover and a nice few swards, and we have reduced our nitrogen, chemical nitrogen, because of that. I've developed these with the team in EIP, these actions, and I've also put in a pond in an outside block, which hopefully you'll see there later on, and I'm also doing settlement ponds, try and catch any sediment coming down before it gets through into water courses. So that's pretty much it. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Carl. Thanks for a very clear presentation there. If you just turn back on. Yep. So a number of questions starting to come in there, and remind people to use the question and answer for questions. I suppose there's been a couple of questions as to why farmers were reluctant to uptake the riparian margins. Have you any reasoning behind that? Is it just the use of the land, or what are the issues there?
I should get my feedback from myself. This is one that we were disappointed about. Basically, the monies that we were proposing now, it ranged from €3 a metre up to €5 a metre for the wildlife margins. That farmers obviously didn't consider that of equal value to what they could farm the land for. It's a finding. It is what it is, you know what I mean? But it was disappointing, you know what I mean? And we had, as I say, we get 5 different options, but that is the finding of this project now. Okay,
it's of interest to those of us who are looking at putting in those types of measures. In relation to the ponds, this sounds like probably one of the most widespread uses of ponds and silt traps across a landscape that probably we have. I presume it's too early to make any judgment of the effectiveness of them, but have you any initial feedback from them?
Pat, as late as this week, I went out to take some of those images, just to take photographs to put on today's slide, and you can quite clearly see the difference in the water quality from the top chamber to the bottom chamber. Now, it's only visual, but it certainly shows a difference already, you know what I mean? But like over time, because of the rainfall amount over here, we will be monitoring these, and some of those chambers, we might need to maybe ask the farmer to go back in and put in a 4th or 5th chamber. But from what we can see, safety already, and this is just a visual inspection, they seem to be working. And now we're also asking the farmers to plant wildlife wetland plants into those this coming summer, so they should establish as well, and they will trap any nutrients that might come down and run off and whatever. Again, they're going to be a complete value to biodiversity, and especially those ponds that are gone in. Like there's phenomenal ponds gone in, and like once they start greening up and wildlife starts coming back into them, you know, as I say, we will monitor them over the next 2 years just to get some feedback on what's actually going on the ground out there.
Okay, and I presume that farmers seeing other farmers putting in ponds, it kind of spreads from one to the other. They see these are not necessarily a bad thing.
Word of mouth is great.
Okay. You said there was 23 pumps put in, and I suppose the question about that is has that had a substantial impact in excluding farmers from having cattle with access to the streams?
Absolutely. Part of the condition of paying them for the pasture and solar pumps was they had to fence the cattle out of the existing access points that were in some places numerous and in other places just maybe one point. So to receive the monies that we paid, they had part of the terms and conditions that they had to fence them out. So, and like outside of that, we had over 37 or 8 kilometers also fenced off. But what we found out, what we're hoping is, because we've now paid them to find an alternative drinking source, that those fences will be maintained going forward and that the cattle will no longer be accessing the streams.
Okay. Noel, a lot of questions starting to come in there.
Yeah, lots of questions coming in, and just to compliment you on a great presentation, Carol. I suppose the first question I actually going to answer for you. It was a question around the image of where you had the overland flow running off a kind of a soiled area into the drain, and there was a big field with no hedges, and it was a question around, is this typical of the area? And that photograph wasn't taken from that area, but it wouldn't be typical, a big massive expanse of ground like that, I'd say, Carol, would it? You know the picture we're talking about.
In our dairy farms, especially in the lower reaches of the catchment, as you know, removal of hedgerows was encouraged for years. We are looking, and part of our measure there was we had a measure for tree lines to be put back in, especially in the critical source areas. There was a nice uptake of those, but because the lower reaches of that area is a floodplain for the Mulkear River, and I have images. I'd love to show you more images. It can be scary, the amount of water that moves around here. And there's one of the rivers there called the Dead River, and it doesn't flow. Like, you can obviously never see it flow in this river, but what it can do, it can rise up to 3 meters and go back down again within a day or two. You know, it just goes up and down. But yeah, overland flow here is an issue, especially during flood events.
Okay. I suppose there's kind of 2 questions here that are around the operation of the project. So the first one is a question around the administration costs, and I think it was in around 23% or 23.5%, and you know, is that a high level? Is it a high cost, maybe in comparison with other EIPs, if you know the answer for that? And then the second one is the operational group, which forms the part of the EIP, and can you confirm who sits on it and how often it meets, how useful they are, how useful is it in the overall running of the project?
Our operational group has 16 members, and these are drawn from the 4 dairy processing co-ops, all the farming organisations. IFA, LCMSA have representation, LAWPO have representation, ASAP advisors are also on it. We also have other local business interests and what have you, kind of independent people. Again, because of the year that we've had over the last 2 years, meetings have been curtailed, but they're an absolutely brilliant bunch, and I can ring any of them at any stage for advice, and if they can't answer my question, they will find the answer for me. They're there at every beck and call. Now, there's some of them we meet more regularly, the LAWSAT people and the ASAP people, but they're all there at any stage. You know what I mean? They've committed, they've signed a contract, committed to the operation group. And as regards the financing of our project in comparison to the other EIPs, as I say, we are a very small team down here. I am the only full-time employee, and my poor field officer is works 3 days a week and he's a dairy farmer also in the catchment. I would imagine we might be at the lower end of the administration costs, but I couldn't conclusively say.
Well, that's fair enough. I suppose there's another one, and I think you possibly have it covered already, but what kind of linear distance of waterway is covered by the EIP? Would you know, I suppose you have whatever.
Linear distance, yeah, I have the area of each of those 7 catchments that we're looking to now inch, and 2 are quite small, but the Mulkear 20 is quite large. I don't actually have the figure for the overall lineage into the rivers that we're working with. It's substantial, as you can see from the maps.
Yeah.
I'm not sure even is that information available. Maybe something we could look at down the road. It would be a lovely figure to have.
Exactly. Something in case you have a quiet day someday, Carol, if you got that.
I have them. Yeah.
Just I suppose maybe a comment from a listener or a viewer as well is that, you know, complimenting the EIP on your work with the lesser horseshoe bat, and you know, it's a great example.
It was something that came out of the blue. A very nice lady in Vincent Wildlife Trust contacted me back last spring. They had previously made an application for EIP funding, and they got to the final stages, but they didn't get there. So they felt that if they could, you know, work with an existing EIP, and our structures have obviously been up and running, that we'd have a better chance. And we did complete the application form, and the locally led section were very pleased with the application, and we have received just over 170,000. And the plan was initially to build 10 of these bat houses for the lesser horseshoe bat. I sometime maybe we'll chat to the lady and Kate up on Vincent Wildlife Trust and Root. They're absolutely passionate about this bat species, and the fact that we have the knowledge on the ground down here. I think it will be very successful, and that hopefully over time we will see the population increase.
There's a couple of questions in here about the ponds, and one, I suppose, very practical one. What are the planning requirements in relation to construction of ponds and sediment traps, if any?
There is planting requirements. This year we will be expecting all of the farmers to plant those wetland. I'm talking about.
Sorry, no, planning as opposed to.
Planning. I thought it was planting. Sorry, the planning. No, because we kept them to 10 meters by 3 meters was the size. We didn't fall under any planning regulation requirements for them.
Okay, and I suppose a related question: is there any runoff from farmyards or grey water being treated in any of these, or are they purely landscape features?
Certainly the in-channel ones and the sediment ponds will be on the main drainage leaving farmyards. And at certain times of the year there is a high risk of runoff, and I think the planting of the plants in there will pick up any nutrients that might occasionally escape. So they're not just features within the landscape, they're actually going to hopefully filter the water. And as I said, sediment is a huge issue here. If we can curtail the sediment into the streams, we would hope to see a recovery of the ecological status of the rivers.
I just give, before I turn back to Noel, I just give you a nice easy question. How will Carol assess if the EIP is a success?
How would I assess? Well, yeah, I suppose so. Thank you. Thanks, Pat. It's terribly easy. There's a few learnings from this that if there was nothing to come out of it, and the one thing that my field office, myself and the board, the local level involvement here, having the team literally in the middle of the catchment is essential. The face-to-face contact with our farmers is invaluable. Now, when we just take contacting them or giving them a notice of the group meetings, like I send out texts. Some farmers don't answer texts. Now, I will say most of them have mobile phones for ringing, but they don't do texts. WhatsApp is not always available. So over time, I've now learned which farmers I specifically have to ring every time. I have a group of farmers that do WhatsApp, and the rest are on text. And I ask them to reply. And as we started rolling out the meetings, within 10 or 15 minutes of I sending out the web text, they'd be back in to say, yeah, we'll be there, or they'd come back and say, look, I can make that night. Can you switch me over to another night? So that team on the ground here has been invaluable. And the other thing that we would really like to see is changing the mindset. Every farmer that I speak to want to do measures to improve the quality of the water down here. There is no unwillingness to do it, but they just need to know how to do it. And the learnings that will come from this should be replicated across many other catchments.
I know.
That's a very good comment. Just to kind of maybe two that is kind of linked. One is around for the capital measures. So, for example, for the solar pump, or the pasture pumps or that kind of thing, is what percentage is paid by the EIP, and what does the farmer have to contribute to it? And then what would the average annual payment for farmers be that are in the project? So
absolutely. We'll just take the solar pumps. We contributed €1,795 to the cost of solar pumps. Now, many of the farmers that put these in, they just covered the pumping of water, but these solar pumps also can, if you get, can have batteries or solar panels to operate electric fences, and a lot of these went into outside farms where there wasn't electricity, so a lot of them now opted for that option as well, to get the current to run the electric fences instead of maybe borrowing it from a neighbour or whatever. So they paid more than that, but it suited them, and that's all good going down the road, because it means that there's more fencing going in. So for the pasture pumps, we paid up to about 180 or 190 euros, and the farmer then installed those pasture pumps. He supplied all the fittings, like the hydro piping and what have you, and that was his contribution to the cost of those, you know what I mean? So we looked at each measure, and in some situations we contributed more, but in other situations the farmer had to put in the time to install them, you know what I mean? So again, generally they were happy. Now, you always have an odd man who would like to get more, of course, but generally they seem to be happy, and the average, most farmers who commit, who do their 4 measures, now all of those measures have to be completed last year, as I did say, some didn't, and there are extenuating circumstances there. Now they will lose a 1/3 proportion of their payment, but each potential to earn at least €1,000 from the project.
Okay, can you just repeat that, because I lost just the value there, because I lost you, and maybe everybody else lost you as well. So just
I'm sorry, each farmer has the potential to earn €7,000.
Okay, that's fine. Now, a kind of maybe an unusual question, but one in here about are the solar pumps insured? And I presume that might be from, I don't know, either damage from use or maybe from being taken. Yes,
and theft could be problem, and most of the farmers are very conscious of that, and they are located out in the way areas, you know what I mean? Yeah. Now, the solar pumps we put in, these will pump water up to a kilometre away, so you know what I mean? You don't have to have the pump and the water truck in the one location, and there is an image, I have it there somewhere, of a man that he's pumping it, and it's even up a slight incline that he's pumped them, and they're working really successful. Again, insurance of these would be the individual farmers to look after that.
Okay, I suppose just a kind of another maybe biodiversity kind of question, and it's not something I think you're dealing with, but around invasive species, you know, that means knotweed, giant hogweed, is that prevalent or a problem? Are you finding in the area?
Yes, it is indeed. There are sections of these streams where there's, especially the Toom and Kappa White, have a huge population of hogweed is very, very predominant in those. Now, I work with the 2 local authorities here, Limerick and Tipperary, and they have a scheme there where they go out and treat that every year. It's something we will look at maybe this year again, maybe to do some work with them. But there is a fairly extensive eradication scheme across the 2 catchments on here, being operated by both Limerick and Tipperary County Council, and they have to be commended for that.
Very good. And maybe one final one from me, Pat, before I hand it back to you. Yep. Had any issues around slurry storage and the adequacy of the slurry storage, and if so, did your program provide any funding for that?
No funding for actual storage. That's, as you know, NORA is covered by TAMS. That was never what we had set out to do. Yeah. Concrete was not something we were ever, it was never within the remit of the project to get into the construction of concrete tanks and storage. I'm sure there is farmers out of our 65 who maybe not have adequate storage. Our field officer would certainly talk to them about that, but like, our measures are more environmentally friendly measures, I suppose, you know what I mean? We don't have the money.
Yeah, that's fair enough. There's loads more questions there, Pat.
I suppose one thing that there's a number, and I think I stopped you answering it before by when there was a question about there are questions about planting in relation to the ponds, and whether you're going to use reed beds or any other level of planting, or is it going to be natural regeneration?
And actually, we had got great advice from a man down in Clare. He came up and spent the day with us when we were laying out these, and he went to South Sarah saying, get your spade, go out into the field and dig up natural occurring irises, and they will regenerate very, very quickly. So you're talking like bulrushes, and irises, they are naturally occurring in this landscape. Now, certainly it would be, I'm sure some of our farmers will try it now. So I have an image there of a man that has put in a selection of wetland plants this year. Now, they will have to go in if that farmer is to receive his full payment at the end of this year.
Okay, listen, thank you very much for, I think it's a really important project, because I think we are facing a lot of requirement to start being a lot more proactive about the measures we put in place in the landscape to protect water quality. It's not just only about nutrient management and management of farmyards. So it's a real learning opportunity, I think, for us all involved in this space. So thank you very much for your presentation. I think you just wanted to make a final comment.
I did indeed, Pat. Without my 65 farmers who participate in this project, I certainly wouldn't be here today, and they have been truly inspirational. It's been an absolute pleasure to work with them.
Okay, thank you very much, Carol. Thank you, Noel. And also thanks to our production team of Andy Boland and Yvonne Marr. Next week, we're kind of changing topic a little bit, and there has been the announcement by the government and the SEAI of the retrofit scheme. And I think it's timely then that we would have Matthew Carey from SEAI to talk to us about the National Heat decarbonisation study. I think it's an area that we will all be very interested in over the next number of years, as to how we turn our houses into from oil guzzling to climate neutral. So I think an insight from him next week should be really useful. So thanks very much to everyone for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.
Thank you.